Mr. Frayer,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Kasimis,
Here.
6 present, you have a quorum.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so first item on the agenda is approval of the April 5th regular meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
So moved. It's Troy.
All right, Troy moves the item. Has everyone had a chance to review?
Yes.
Yes. Are there any additions, deletions? No? All right. So all in favor of approving the minutes of the April 5th regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is there is no special appropriations item on the, there are no special appropriations on the agenda. There are some transfers beginning on page 10. And I understand that there have been changes, or there have been additions to the transfers from the hard copies that we received. So I'm going to scroll onto my screen and go to those transfers. Okay, so as I see it, the first item is the police department. Is that correct?
Yes.
There appear to be two separate transfers, or is that just but there's one for $25,000, and then I think I saw later there was an additional one for $66,000.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. That the late addition was that cars and vans, multiple transfers to the cars and vans account.
Okay, is the chief on? Is the Chief Kahalik
Yes.
on? Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
Do you want to just help us with this?
Okay, so the one for, the one that was originally in there for the 25,000.
Yeah.
So what we're requesting is through our various emergency service unit accounts, there's a number of items that we weren't either able to do or didn't do this past year because of a lot of it because of COVID, some expenses that we had planned. There is a piece of equipment that we've been looking at to replace an antiquated piece of equipment that we have. Right now, the crisis negotiators use what they call a throw phone, which is on a cable, and they'll throw that in if someone is barricaded into a residence or apartment or something. But that requires the cable to be strewn out. You have to get close enough to get it in there. It malfunctions, etc. And it's actually old equipment at this point. The newer technology uses cell phone technology where there's a cell phone device that's unbreakable that you throw in to speak to the person. So we're looking to move a number of small amounts from various accounts in that emergency services line items and group that in order to purchase that new version of the throw phone. And the explanation, a further explanation is also included behind the account numbers that was prepared by Deputy Chief Walsh in the emergency services unit, more specifically exactly what the item is. But that's basically in a nutshell what we're looking to do.
Any questions? I'm sorry, the item hasn't been moved yet, so would someone move the item?
I'll move it.
All right, Artie moves the item. Are there any questions concerning it?
No.
So this is one unit, one phone that is essentially indestructible, or is it many phones?
No, it's one device.
Okay.
I'm saying a phone. It does more than just a phone, but basically it uses the cell phone technology
Okay.
as
I
opposed to
understand.
a wired device.
All right. So it does more than just like it's it's not like you're throwing a cell phone in there.
It's more- correct.
Like covered in a bubble wrap or something, right?
Correct.
All right. All right. Any other questions? All right. And then you want to speak on the second item?
The second one was not in the packet. It got missed, but I know you have it, and I believe everyone has it now. And this is, sorry, I'm choking here. There's a number of, again, a number of small transfers from a variety of accounts that have open items in them that we feel we can transfer before this year is over, to move to cars and vans. And we had in the capital, excuse me, in the capital budget, we had budgeted for a new animal control vehicle, which was approved. However, because the budget's done so far in advance and the upfit of the cruisers came in much higher than we had anticipated, we're short on being able to purchase the animal control van. So we're looking to move those various items that are ranging from 1,000 to 4,000 up to 11,000. Most of them are in the 1,000 to 2,000 range, to move that into cars and vans to purchase the animal control van. The current van is 2012, so it's almost 10 years old, and they do not have a backup vehicle. So we're looking to replace the primary vehicle and then use the 2012 model as a backup for them.
So what's the cost of I'm sorry.
The van is in the area of about $30,000, $35,000. We're looking at I don't know if it's called a Dodge Caravan anymore, but one of those, like a family type. Yeah. The vehicle they use now is like a Dodge Caravan, so it's similar to that.
So you're requesting $66,000
Well,
for,
yeah, then there's other transfers here. I'll let Mickey speak to the other transfers that are going to other operating. Can you cover that, Mick? You're on mute.
is he on?
He's on, but he's on mute.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
There he is.
Sorry about that. So yeah, we have some other transfers that are going into the police operating account that we're going to use for things like AEDs, for some AEDs that have expired, and it's time that we need to replace them so they're still functional. Just to update, the price of the van with the upfit is going to be somewhere around $38,000. That's what we estimated at. And the remainder of the money we're putting into operating our patrol operating account for other operating supplies so we can update safety equipment. Again, most of this is coming from seminar type line items that didn't occur because of COVID. So this is my end of the year balance budget account transfers. I would also like to say that, I work closely with Angela every day, and our budget is in total balance. So these items will not put us in danger of being deficit anywhere. So, we feel good about the transfers and the equipment that we can get if they're approved.
I've got a question about the van. I believe the chief said that monies were allocated for the van, but because the monies were budgeted so far in advance, the cost of the upgrades have made it so that the money that was allocated is not sufficient. But what you're saying is that you're asking for the van to be paid fully from this transfer rather than from partly monies that were already allocated?
Actually, in years past, the cars and vans account existed in 53 and was an operating expense. It's been since moved to capital. So yes, because we have to budget so far in advance, we're budgeting in essence 1.5 years to 1.75 years in advance. Since that time, between budgeting and attainment, the prices went up slightly, but when, prices for a number of vehicles and upfits go up, it ate into the money that we were going to use the van for. So yes, we had to prioritize, get the other vehicles, and now the van will be purchased totally from these transfers.
I understand.
And just to add, one of the other issues we dealt with is the new version of the Ford Explorer, the police SUV. was a different frame than the old version. They completely changed the size. It got bigger. So all the equipment was new, basically. So we were kind of estimating a lot on what was going to be necessary to replace. And it turned out that a lot of the stuff that to upfit the vehicle, the cages, the racks, the lighting, all that, nothing from the old vehicles could be used basically because the size of the vehicle changed dramatically.
I see. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I believe, Artie, when you moved the item, I think you were intending to move the entire
Yes.
transfer agenda, or? All right.
Yes,
All right, so the entire transfer agenda has been moved with respect to this item. All in
Mr.
favor?
Chairman, could we have a
Yes.
dollar number? We haven't heard a number.
The one item is,
That I have, the 25 I have.
okay, this second item is $66,523.
Thank you.
So all in favor of those two transfers, one for $25,708.26 and the $66,000 transfer, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? All right, the motion carries and those transfers have been approved.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
All right, economic and community development is next up.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I have Steve Kleppen here, Director of Planning and Zoning, and Bill Ireland, our building official here. We are bringing forward a number of transfers to you today in our operating budget. No special appropriations, just asking to move money from one account to another account for a few separate reasons. From a planning and zoning standpoint, we are experiencing such a high number of permits that are coming in, and we've actually had a little bit of a backlog, and we've been monitoring that for a number of weeks, and that backlogging continues to increase. So we're looking for to do two things there. One is to move some money into the temporary employment where we are able to work with on a temporary basis with a team to be able to enter the permitting information into Municity to help alleviate some of the staff time that it takes to input the information in. And then that way the staff will be able to have the time to be able to process the zoning with their expertise. And the second piece is to add some funding, to transfer some funding into the part-time account in order to be able to support some part-time work to be able to help us process that backlog. And I think that what's interesting here is that we are seeing an unprecedented amount of permits come in. So I think people who have been home for the last year have been deciding to do a little bit of additional work to their homes this summer. And we continue to see a large amount of development happening as well. But we know that what goes through planning and zoning will eventually go through building and code as well. So for that reason, we're looking at building and code and asking to be able to transfer some of the account money into the part-time wages account for Bill to be able to support his staff and his team and being able to process those permits. What we've been doing to date is asking people to take additional permits home with them, either in the evenings or on the weekends, or being able to stay a couple extra hours in the office to be able to process those. But what we're finding is with the committees and commissions, we're asking the staff to staff those hours. But in addition to that, with COVID, we're actually helping with technical teams to be able to run some of the Zoom meetings for other team members as well. So we're looking to be able to transfer some of those funds primarily into temporary and part-time, both in building and code and planning and zoning, to not only work through the permit backlog, but also get us up to speed for the fiscal, so that we'll be flush when we start the fiscal year in July 1st. And then the second piece that I mentioned was a waterfront study. And basically we contracted with UTile to be able to do an industrial study for the city of Norwalk. And that's looking at all of the industrial land and understanding what the public would like to see and how we should be categorizing industrial land and the actual zoning terminology that we should be using. And we had our first public meeting on Thursday, which went really well. We had over 50 people there. But one of the things that we intended to do with the original scope was to include a waterfront study. And including the waterfront study would focus on the parcels on Water Street, but also the parcels that basically touch the river all the way up, the Norwalk River, all the way under the bridge at Wall Street, and so on and so forth. And it's a little bit of a heavier lift than we initially intended. So we had asked UTILE to come up with a scope to be able to focus on the waterfront study. And what they indicated was that that work would be $60,000. So what we'd like to do is amend the UTILE contract so that not only are they doing the industrial study for the city, but they're also including a deeper dive in the waterfront parcels specifically. So those are the transfers that you see in front of you. Some of them are more substantial, $85,000 for Bill's department, and then the remainder for Steve's, which are some small transfers in order to be able to move to temporary and part-time. And then you'll see one larger transfer, which is the $60,000 that relates to the waterfront study. And again, Bill and Steve are on if there's any specific questions.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I'll move the item.
Okay. I believe the entire transfer agenda was moved, but just to be safe, thank you for that. Are there any questions concerning this?
Yeah, I had one question, Jessica, if you don't mind. Does the current consultant have a background in waterfront development and utilization?
I believe so, but Steve will be able to give more detail.
Sure. So they did bring on an extra team member for that specific aspect of the project. So they have familiar with industrial land, but there were specific concerns they had related to the waterfront in terms of, obviously, if you're talking about the depth of the water channel, sea level rise impacts and those kind of things, which may not come up as much in their day-to-day work. They brought an extra team member on to help facilitate that part of the project.
Are they going to be just looking at industrial sites, or are they also going to look at privately held sites as well?
Well, the industrial property for the most part is privately held, but if you're talking more about like residential properties that abut the water, that's a different animal that we're going to take on at a future date.
Well, I guess I might have misstated that. So we've got industrial sites that are privately held, obviously, and then you've got other sites that may not be residential but are open right now. Are those sites going to be included? And I'm trying to think of a site that nothing springs to mind right now, but there could be some sites that are not being used as industrial sites right now, but are vacant. So in other words, present opportunities to us.
So if those properties are within the current, so most of the land that we'd be looking at as part of the additional study would be in zone what we would call marine commercial or industrial right now. There could be parcels that are outliers that are in between that are either residentially used or might be a different zone that we would contemplate looking at in the big picture, but not targeting anything like that specifically.
Okay, my last question is, about a year ago, we had allocated about $30,000, or maybe it was 2 years ago, that we authorized $30,000 for the police department to look at and search for a place for the the Marine unit. Would that be included in this, or could we use that $30,000?
I'm not sure of the status of those funds.
I don't think it's been used. I think it was, and Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the police department has used that $30,000 yet.
They have not done the study yet, but that is a separate study.
And I talked to Sue Zecca actually last week about it, where they're in the process of looking at city-owned parcels that are waterfront parcels that may be, that their consultants can look at and do an analysis on. So they're, I believe they're, and I don't want to speak for them, but what we were looking for last week was those city-owned parcels, so they could do basically an assessment on if the sites were suitable for a Marine unit or not.
Wouldn't it make sense to combine those two?
I think they're really looking at two different things. I think that the study that we're talking about tonight and requesting funds for is a broader use of land in general. Obviously, marine uses and boat docks would be part of that, but we're not specifically citing where a boat launch should be, for example. So that it would be kind of use that would be permitted in the broader area, but not specifically what we're targeting.
But you're going to be looking at industrial sites that may or may not be owned by the city. Wouldn't the police department be doing the same thing, but limiting it to what's owned by the city?
Well, we're looking at what the best uses of land should be now and in the future for those industrial properties based on different things that are occurring in the economy, things that we maybe haven't thought of because the zoning around those parcels right now hasn't been looked at in a very long time. And there's also interest to get at the water from the public standpoint in terms of waterfront access. So how do you accommodate allowing people to get at the water while also allowing marine industry to thrive? So that those are the kind of things we're looking at with the studies, where a specific boat launch would be versus another use is not necessarily the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, it would sound like you're looking at similar things because the police department's going to not take someplace that could possibly, that first of all is not owned by the city, but would probably not want to take a boat launch ramp facility away from the public. So I would think that the two projects would definitely be tied together or could be tied together. And, for $90,000, that's a lot of money that we've now decided that we're going to spend on the same subject. Maybe we could do it for $75,000 and get a break.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at it as the same subject. I look at them, their specific items and things that they're looking at would be ours on a macro scale. So we're looking at the big picture thing. So we're going to say this area of the city would be appropriate for marines and boat docks and those kind of things. So if those were areas identified in our plan, then whether it's the police or the fire department or a private entity looking for boat launching facilities could say, okay, the city in their vision has determined that these areas are appropriate for boat launches and something like that. And then that would provide guidance to whomever is searching to look at those specific areas and determine on a site-by-site basis whether that would fit and be appropriate for their specific use.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
think another way.
I'm sorry, I don't want to beat this thing to death. But what you just said would be that your study group may identify something that might be ideal for a boat launch ramp or access for the citizens. On the other hand, the police department could have a study going on doing the same thing that identifies that same property that is ideal for a marine unit. So
Let me add-
that they would
I
work
think
together.
I think the difference is really the scale of it. So I think what the police department is doing is bringing on a site selection team that will look at the 5 sites that are owned by the city and assess if those 5 sites are suitable for a marine unit or not. I think that what Steve's study is doing is looking at commercial industrial and doing swath areas where this swath would be good for commercial, this would be good for industrial, this would be good for water dependent. So I think the scale is a little bit different. I think what the police department is looking at is much more specific site planning where they would understand if they have the ability to access the water, if they have the ability to build out a marine unit. And I don't think that part of that project was discussing the acquisition of private land to be able to do that. So it was very based on the sites that the city already owns that are adjacent to water, which is really a handful.
It seems also possible that there are security considerations that whatever expert the police department hires might have that these other consultants might not have because after all you're going to put a police unit on the water in a certain location in the city, and that is not just a a function. So determining whether to put it there or not is not just a function of whether or not it's available, but whether or not it's suitable from many points of view, including a security point of view.
Yeah, I would say the Utile group is more of a land use expertise group versus the police group, which is more of a site selection group. So I think I think it's a different scale. And I think you're right, Chairman. I think they'll be looking at different criteria for that site, but I don't, again, I shouldn't be speaking for the police department, but from what I know, that's their focus.
Well, my opinion is that the two groups, well, maybe what you should do is get together with the police department, clarify exactly what their criteria is, what they're looking for. And then possibly, if we're going to spend $60,000 on this, which is not a lot of money in the great scheme of things, because Norwalk's got a pretty large harbor, and economic benefits that we get from recreational boating and so forth can be phenomenal to the city. So I think it behooves us to bring the two groups together and combine the two, or at least understand exactly what the police department is looking for, and whether the consultant that we're hiring can do some of that job for us. Or just talk to the group that I forget what's the name of the consultant that you guys are using?
Your name's
Utile.
Utile?
Utile?
Utile,
whatever.
Exactly.
Go to them and say, look, we have the police, how about for another $10,000, you do a site selection and help us out here? Who knows?
definitely
Maybe
a-
they
I
might
think
have
it's-
another guy in the back room that does site selection too.
It's definitely a conversation that we can have with the police department, and even, I think we still, even given that we're requesting that transfer, but I do think there's time to be able to have the conversation with police and understand exactly what they're looking at and dig a little bit deeper. So, I mean, there might be a possibility for us to be able to share the load a little bit and share the cost a little bit. So that's something that we can dive into.
I think it's important that we do that. And I mean, we can't just stay in our little silo. I think you've got to go from silo to silo periodically and work together. So if you promise me you'll do that, I'd be in favor of the 60,000.
I promise.
We'll ask the question for sure.
Promise,
All right.
Steve?
I'll
That was-
cross my heart.
That's a very limited promise. It's just asking.
I have my video off, so you can't see my fingers crossed, but yes, I promise.
We'll find you.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the transfer item in the amount of 167,700? I believe that's the amount.
Could we have a number? What is
Yeah,
it?
167,000. I'm sorry,
700, okay.
$167,700.
Right, got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Reservations? All right, the item carries.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you. Thank you very much.
let the
Thank you.
record show that Sherry Brown did join the meeting at approximately 6:43.
Yes, I did notice that. Thank you.
The public needs to hear that. That's why I say it.
I know. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see, the next item is, I guess it's sort of an omnibus item. Oh, this is contingency prior approvals. Okay, so that was previously approved.
We do have, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, we do have one additional transfer that was on page 10C. It was also a late
10C.
addition from Community Services.
Okay,
And on 10C, it's the memo from Lamont Daniels. It's for $10,000 from their other contractual services account.
yes, I see it.
To the, okay.
Okay, so would someone like to move that item since it seems to be a somewhat separate item?
So moved.
All right, Mr. Gilloret moved it.
So move, Troy.
Troy. Okay, Mr. Daniels?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. There, as Angela indicated, there is a memo for your leisure to read. So I'm requesting to move $10,000 to our contractual services. The Human Relations and Fair Rent it ensures fairness between our tenants and landlords. And recently, we lost the Director of Human Relations and Fair Rent. This is a specialized service with specific expertise. So while we actively recruit the replacement to hire a new human relations and fair rent director, it is critical that the continuity and the services continue. As you know, we still have the eviction moratorium, and unfortunately, there are tenants who are still in various situations where their landlord attempts to raise the rent or treat it unfairly. So this particular service is very important to our residents to ensure that they're treated fairly, that their rights are not taken advantage of. Prior to the former director's departure, we still had 15 open cases. And so I'm asking for the $10,000 to maintain a contracted attorney, which I receive advisement and recommendations from corporate counsel, and have met this individual to move to bring this person on to maintain those services and make sure our residents' rights are not taken advantage of, and to review the open cases of fair rent situations that ought to be advised and recommended to the commission. And then I laid out what this particular person will be doing and items they'll be reviewing the intakes that come in, emergency case actions, attend the Fair Rent Commission meetings to update them on current cases, enable them to close cases. And then if possible, depending on the time in which we bring someone on, I would like to try to keep them on a little bit longer to train a successor. Again, we are actively recruiting. We've identified 5 candidates, and we're moving as quickly as possible to get an interview date so we can interview the candidate and bring on someone to become the new Director of Human Relations and Fair Rent for the city of Norwalk.
For my edification, who held that position?
Anna Keegan.
Okay.
She has
And
left
this
us.
this person that you contracted for what seems like a retainer of $10,000, is this for is this a local attorney that you contracted?
No, this
contract with?
No, this is not a local attorney. This is we did some due diligence locally. Again, this is a specific expertise in specialized services. So corporate counsel helped us identify someone by the name of Attorney Russell Liskoff.
Okay.
Who I should note, who is the retainer is at very, very, very minimal, probably from attorney fees. So he's really supporting us and helping us to support and take on this role at a very discounted rate, I should say.
Mr. Chairman, it's Troy. Lamont, real quick. Was it a surprise that the interim person left, and was that person a candidate to be the permanent person?
She was a candidate in the sense that we were working to move her into the position, but she made a decision to do something different. So it wasn't directly connected of her interim title. At least that wasn't shared with me.
How long was she with the city?
Oh boy. I'm gonna say maybe 6 years. I'm not really sure. But she served as the field investigator. Then when Adam Blavinsky left, she stepped in as the interim director.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
And when you
Hi, this is Sherry Brown. Just so you don't get in trouble, for something like that, do you have to get a couple of different offers? Like, and I mean, probably maybe not a standard RP request for proposals, but just for something like that, do you have to put it out there?
I can't speak to that. I know that we were advised through corporate counsel, and my understanding is through the corporate counsel arrangement that we were able to secure an attorney, so they didn't have to go through the RFP process that you referenced.
Now you say that there are 15 cases that are open. These are 15 cases of potential evictions, or what type of cases are?
Well, that's what they're going to do. So I know of some of them. I don't know all of them. Some of them, most of them around the landlord would like to increase their rent. Some of them have received landlord eviction notices, but through the fair rent process, we determine if it's legal, if it's fair, and it's just. So that's what this attorney is doing for us right now. And some of them, I just learned today, because he was here today, just talking, looking at the cases. Some of them need to be closed, that they were still open on the books, but they weren't officially closed. So he's really doing a very amazing job of cleaning everything up. In fact, so, my goal is that when the new person comes, they'll have a fresh start.
And you said you're actively looking for the new person.
Yes, we've identified 5 candidates, working with HR right now to identify interview dates to start interviewing.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. This is a transfer of $10,000, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All in favor of the transfer request of $10,000 from wages and salary, part-time line item 011000-5140, signify, and there's another, to the other contracted services line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the transfer's been approved.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Approval of the 2020-2021 suspense list. Lisa?
I'll move the
Good
item.
evening. Can
Oh, the
you
item
hear
was
me?
moved by the mayor. Yeah, the item was moved by the mayor, Lisa.
Thank you. This is an annual process that we come before the board with every year. It is an oversight function that the rate-making authority by state statute has to review and approve the tax collector's transfer to suspense. What this basically does, it doesn't mean we don't ever collect on these accounts. It just means that they're classified in a slightly different way. They're taken off the list of assets and deemed uncollectible, but we do still engage in certain collection enforcement activities. So for example, we do still report these individuals to the state DMV so that their licenses, their vehicle registrations will be flagged for delinquent taxes. What we don't do is we don't continue to try to send tax bills to addresses that are no longer valid. So part of it is an efficiency measure to try to save resources. Part of it is to try to more accurately classify the asset. There is also some business personal property accounts on this list. Typically, if a company goes into federal bankruptcy and there are no more assets, we will classify the bills that they did not pay as suspended accounts. With that being said, we do still make collections on suspense all the time. I was at the counter with somebody last week and they made a payment of more than $1,000 on a suspended account. So it's not like we've completely given up hope. We just classify the asset in a different way, primarily so that we don't have to continue to try to send tax bills. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have about it.
Are there any questions?
I had one quick question. I think this is a great package you put together, Lisa. It looks like an awful lot of work. On page 1, you say that this year's request of transfer is less than the 833 from the previous year. Okay. And if I look at, and you will go on to say that it's been continually decreasing since 2007. Is that right?
More or less. Yeah, some years it goes up a tiny bit, but overall it's been going down.
So if I look at that list that you gave us, so you gave us the list from 2006 to 2020, and the high and the low are the low of 306 in 2014 and the high of 962 in 2015. that's thousands. That seems amazing. What happened between 2014 and 2015 that we jumped from 306.6 to 962.1? And also it bounces all around. The average is about 607,000 if I look at those 15 years per year.
Mhm.
How come this thing bounces? I can understand bouncing, 20,000 up, 20,000 down or something like that. But when I looked at that 2014 to 2015, that bounced up 600,000. Is that just that there was carryover into 2015 perhaps, or why is that?
It's very specific to whatever happened that year. So do you remember Grosso Construction?
Yeah.
Do you remember when we had the company Grosso Construction and we were not able to collect on their debt?
Okay.
That's one of those years where there was a big jump. So
Okay.
if there is a business personal property account that we can't collect because they're either in bankruptcy or they go out of business, that can be $400,000, $500,000, which is one of the reasons why one of your predecessor boards before you felt that we needed a delinquent tax collector to try to prevent that kind of loss. So not to let it get to the point where they owed $100,000 or $200,000 that might disappear. So that's why, even though, don't forget, our levy has been going up every year.
Mhm.
So even though the dollar amount that's transferred to suspense may hover around the same amount or be a little less, our levy has gone up every single year for the last 20 years.
Right.
So we're putting less quantity on suspense as a portion of our original levy. And I think what's happening is, again, in general terms, we're collecting faster and losing less. You will see going forward an increase in motor vehicle taxes that are transferred to suspense next year, because now in Connecticut, we have a 3-year motor vehicle registration cycle. And what that means is we're going to lose more people because there are taxpayers who pay their motor vehicle taxes only when they need to register a vehicle. And a lot can happen in 3 years. They can move, they can leave, they can change their name, they can decide they're going to lease vehicles. So I suspect that going forward, we'll see even more of a loss with motor vehicle, but possibly less with business personal property. But it's really hard to generalize because you can have one really big account that just throws everything off.
So let me ask it another way then. If I take a look at the business accounts,
Yes.
is the volume going down and the dollar amount go up?
Again, it depends on the year. So this year we had,
Okay.
what we think happened is we don't know a lot of the accounts that we would have been putting into suspense because we have not had the activity in the field to let us know. In other words, the assessor's office wasn't necessarily going out and doing inspections. So I don't know which businesses have left. I might know more next year. But the ones that we know they're gone and there's no assets, we put them in suspense. There may be some that we are carrying on our list that will end up in suspense. I thought it would be higher this year due to COVID, but we just don't know yet.
Okay.
I hope, I'm trying to give you specific answers to a question that there might not be a specific
No, but
answer to.
I think you've kind of explained it, that if you can have, you have things in there that skew it way out of line, like a Grosso, for example. If Grosso was what, a couple $100,000, that skews everything. Your volume doesn't go up dramatically, but one guy can put it way out of whack. And I think that even in some of these that I took a quick look through, there's some big dollar items, close to $100,000, close to about $150,000 is what is it? The Swim 70 or something?
Yeah. That was a big one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Not great, but thank you.
Lisa, this is Troy, real quick. You do keep track of the collections on these items in suspense, right?
We have to keep track of it separately because it's going into a separate fund when we do collect it. And it doesn't actually go toward our collection rate. It's considered a suspense collection. It's treated differently, yes.
I would just say, to add to your, it's very helpful showing the 2006 to 2020 numbers, but maybe you could add a column just showing historically what's been collected, maybe starting next year, because I don't know if you can go back. It would be helpful just to see, because I know you're always trying to collect it, so it'd be helpful just to see what we've actually collected.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions concerning that? I guess that's not really an action item, that's just information, is that right? Or no, we actually have to approve the suspense item.
You
right?
have to
So
approve it, yeah.
It's, what's the dollar amount again?
806.
800.
No, it's 833, isn't it?
No, the updated package that came via email is 806,000 and change.
806, 622.36.
Okay, that number. All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? All right, the item carries. The amount of 806,622.36 has been transferred to suspense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is a resolution regarding making appropriations for public improvements. Should we, would someone read that resolution? Madam Clerk, would you mind reading that resolution, I guess?
Resolution making appropriations for various public improvements aggregating $31,416,972 for the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $31,416,972 general obligation funds of the city to meet certain appropriations in the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 capital budget.
Okay. Someone like to move the item?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Ed. Okay. Mr. Dakowitz, would you like to speak on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the annual appropriation for our capital budget. It was approved in the gross amount of 31.4 million. Joining us on tonight's call is Bruce Chudwick from the law firm of Shipman and Goodwin. They are our bond counsel. Bruce, would you like to discuss it?
Yes, thank you, Henry. Thank you, members of the board. I'm using Chitsume's Zoom call in today, so it's not her, it's me, but it's nice to see you all. And this is the annual resolution that we put together working with Henry and Chitsume and the mayor to gather up the appropriation bond authorizations for your various capital projects for the various departments. So it just in general provides for appropriating the sum of $31,416,972 and authorizing the issuance of the bonds. The bonds are issued by the mayor and by Henry in consultation with a committee that's established under the resolution, which is basically the president, majority leader, and minority leader of the council, as well as the finance committee chair. And so if this is approved, we will work with Henry and his staff to put together the package to go out to the bond markets and borrow the money at the appropriate time to fund the capital projects and have them completed in accordance with the resolution. So that's a brief summary, if that's okay, Henry.
Thank you, Bruce. Excellent. I'm ready to answer any questions.
I just want to note that attached to the item in the packet as Exhibit A are the specific amounts for the specific projects that are being bonded. So I assume Has had a chance to review those. Are there any questions concerning them?
No.
Okay. There being no questions, all in favor of approving the resolution as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the item carries and the resolution has been adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone. Good evening.